This is the Living Conversation, and I am your co-host, Anthony Wright,
Adam Dietz.
and welcome back. This is we're a couple of philosophers who have studied Eastern and Western philosophy, and one of the things we talked about before the show began was we've studied under a mentor, both of us, named Dr. Yi Wu, he's from Taiwan, from Taipei, and talk a little bit about your experience with Dr. Wu.
Oh, my experience with Dr. Wu was just beyond words, of course. I think when I first met Dr. Wu, I had an idea that philosophy was meant to be in some mountain or mystical place.
Right.
And so the first class I took with Dr. Wu was on Confucianism. And I remember one of the
Oh,
first lessons being about responsibility.
okay.
Mm. Yeah, so with responsibility, just taking spirituality and putting it in your daily life. Taking philosophy and putting it in your daily life. You don't need to go to some mountain. You just Confucianism emphasizes human relationships. We are human beings. We are meant to interact with other human beings. We are meant to harmonize with other human beings. When you're doing that, you are fulfilling a great destiny for your own life, very embodied. Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
Um, and you also spoke about Dr. Wu had this theory
mm,
that he had in a triangle
mm,
form. Can you
mm.
talk a little bit about that?
So the second semester I took with Dr. Wu was Essence and Development of Chinese Philosophy.
Oh, right. I remember
So
that.
this helped reorient away from Western philosophy to really get to, of course, essence and development of Chinese philosophy. But one of the first most important things he delineated for a principle of the course was that philosophy should have three parts. One is the highest level. This is in Chinese philosophy, Tao, or in Confucianism, heaven, or heaven inside of us is our humanity. There's the highest level.
It's not like a Christian idea.
Well, if you can make a triangle for Christian too, then God will be at the top.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But then what's important is that you have the other aspects. So the bottom of triangle has theory. So in our case right now, these are your words. So
Right.
right now, this living conversation is our theory,
Yeah.
discussing, talking, fleshing things out. The third part of the triangle is practice. How do
Uh,
you implement in your life?
which is what we're doing here. And thank you for tuning in and for watching. And both you and I have taught critical thinking in past semesters. Hope I don't know if we're going to get to do it again, but when you are teaching critical thinking, you bring in both Eastern and Western
Mm, mm,
philosophy. And part of what we talked about last time was um, uh, this idea of wisdom
mm,
and Socrates.
mm.
Uh, where do we find wisdom in Chinese philosophy, for example, than for Confucius?
Mm, mm. So when I first learned I was going to teach critical thinking class, I started contemplating. I think it was more a method from Dr. Wu, Chinese Eastern philosophy method. You contemplate on the subject. So
So thinking deeply.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, mulling it over,
Yeah.
letting it sit with it, see what resonates for you, what you remember. So one thing that's very important that I felt like resonated very deeply was in Confucian philosophy, there's the great learning. And
Oh, yeah.
in the great learning, this word thinking to me came that part of the great learning is that you make your thought sincere. So for critical thinking, I thought, okay, I know Western critical thinking, logic, reason, but oh, how do we bring in Confucian critical thinking? Make your thoughts sincere. This felt like it had a lot of depth to offer to a critical thinking class, to offer to students.
And I remember Dr. Wu talking about, he said you could describe all of Chinese philosophy in two
Mm,
words, sincerity and
mm,
humility.
mm, mm,
And sincerity would be the yang,
mm,
and humility would be yin.
mm,
And
mm,
I do recall, for those of you who may not know the book, The Great Learning, it's something that really caught my attention, and it's quite straightforward. So it's if you want the world to be peaceful, then your country has to be peaceful. And if your country is going to be peaceful, then the town has to be peaceful. And if the town's going to be peaceful, then your family has to be peaceful. And if your family is going to be peaceful, then you have to be peaceful. Well, how do you become peaceful? And this was part of my study. And part of how you become peaceful is to calm out the heart, to rectify the heart, Xing. And then once you comb your heart out, and become sincere, then you investigate things, right?
Extend knowledge.
Extend knowledge. Thank you. You extend knowledge, and how do you extend knowledge? You investigate things, and that's a Western translation. And my translation, to bring into this conversation, my work in complexity science. Instead of investigate things, I was able to translate the same characters, Gerwu, into pattern your being, like the patterns in uh, wood, or the patterns in jade or skin or clouds, because those are all fractal patterns. Because once you pattern your being, then you become at peace. And when you're at peace, then that radiates from you to your family, and then to the community, and then to the country, and then to the planet. And that's one of the things also I remember. I've got a clip of His Holiness the Dalai Lama talking about his main point that he talks about, certainly is compassion, but it's also about tranquility. So when you are offering, and we're talking about 18 and 19-year-old students, and they many times had never heard anything like this. So where do you begin in offering this idea of the Tao?
Tao is very tricky.
Yeah, I know.
Tao is very tricky. So students are more able to understand a high level, talk about Tao. One of the highest level things we talk about is being and non-being. And even this is very challenging for them. What students can understand, actually you mentioned before, yin and yang.
Right.
Yin and yang. So Tao is very high level. Tao is beyond words. Tao produces one qi. Now you can talk about this one energy.
Yes, and
one energy.
Seem to remember in the Tao Te Ching, it's I think it's verse 42. The Tao made one, and then one made two, and then two made three, and then that was the 10,000 thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll continue though.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Thank you for that. And what students can then understand is, okay, Tao is very difficult beyond words. One sheet goes into everything. Okay, now we can understand a little more and talk about maybe two. So maybe non-being and being, or okay, non-being and being are two sides of the same coin. But most importantly, yin and yang. So when we start to talk to students, they really can understand yin and yang. Yin and yang is like you use sincerity, some action, yang energy, or you use humility, some calmness, yin energy. Humility and sincerity in Chinese philosophy can solve any problem. You can go into any situation, you just use some sincerity, or you just use some humility. You can handle all life situations.
Right.
But this students can understand.
And we're in some pretty complicated situations right now. And I did want to touch on the idea of these words, yin and yang. Yin means the shadowy side of the mountain, and yang means the and I'm going to turn this off. Yang means the sunny side of the mountain. So so it's kind of knowing where you are. The other thing that I remember from what Dr. Wu said was, we can't know the Tao, but we can know the function of the Tao. And the function of the Tao is to make space for things.
Function of the Tao we teach in class, same thing. Function of the Tao is to empty, weaken, like water, weaken. So water can like make space, right? Water can
Right.
can take
And is that
in
more the
heavy
idea
things.
of non-being? Because in the West, non-being, I have the idea of non-being as like sort of being in the zone, in flow state. Would you say that's true?
Definitely, definitely. We try to use that in class.
And in your soccer game, and as a soccer coach.
When we talk about Zen later in class, we talk about what is Zen for you? Actually, because nowadays we have this word in our vocabulary, Zen. Before 100 years ago, no one knows this word.
Yeah.
But now every student uses Zen as a adjective. That's so Zen.
Oh, right.
So they have a real strong idea already in their mind of what Zen is.
Uh-huh.
So important in Zen, sometimes you hear there's an important work, Zen mind, beginner's mind. So I ask my students, well, they still have a beginner's mind, what is Zen for you? So they get together and discuss, and they often mention something like you're talking about, a flow state. They do some art, they perform some athletic activities, maybe going for a jog, listening to music, and it's very much like a flow state. Their mind is empty, their mind is peaceful. They describe this without even studying Zen. They describe these type of things.
Okay.
Mm.
And that's a famous book that was written of the transcriptions of Shinryu Suzuki of the San Francisco Zen Center.
Mm.
And for the longest time, man, I thought he meant mind. And it was so, and another one of the wonderful things Dr. Wu talked about, he said, the people in the West, you guys think with your brain and not your mind. And mind is Xing, heart mind. So to me, that's really important. So it's beginner's heart mind, and so anyway, we're coming up on a break. I'm Anthony Wright. I'm co-host with
Adam Dietz.
And my website is theonaut.com, theonaut.com. And you can send me a commentary and email there. And Adam, you have a Substack?
Yeah, I have Substack. It's called The Way Between.
The Way Between. And you want to offer your email?
Yeah, my email is dietzadam@gmail, Dietz, Adam, one word, at gmail.com.
Please email us with your questions if you have some questions.
A living conversation.
Yeah.
Together.
We'll take those up, in future talks. So we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.